Isn't that your poor barren ex-mate? What is she doing here? And wait, she has triplets!
I stepped out of the custom Rolls-Royce, my Louboutins clicking against the marble steps of the Silver Pine Cathedral, and watched every single wolf in attendance turn to stare. Good. I wanted their attention. The whispers started immediately. A low hum of confusion and recognition that rippled through the crowd like wildfire. 5 years. It had been 5 years since I'd set foot in Silver Pine territory, and judging by the slack-jawed expressions, they'd all assumed I was dead, or at least broken beyond repair. They were wrong on both counts. Behind me, my 3 4-year-old daughters, Luna, Stella, and Aurora, emerged like little goddesses in matching silver dresses, their unusual violet eyes scanning the crowd with an intelligence that made several pack members step back instinctively. Luna clutched her stuffed wolf, Stella smoothed her dress with tiny, precise movements, and Aurora simply stared at everyone with the kind of direct gaze that made grown wolves uncomfortable. "Mommy," Luna whispered, tugging at my designer dress. "Why does everyone smell scared?" I squeezed her small hand gently, keeping my expression serene even as my heart hammered against my ribs. Of course they could smell fear. My daughters weren't ordinary children, they were something more. Something powerful, and everyone here could sense it even if they didn't understand what it meant. "They're just surprised to see us, sweetheart," I murmured, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence that had fallen over the cathedral steps. The massive oak doors loomed ahead, decorated with white roses and silver ribbons. Damon's wedding. The thought should have filled me with the satisfaction of perfect timing, but instead maternal instinct warred with my carefully planned revenge. I'd spent 5 years building an empire, accumulating wealth and power, all for this moment, all to walk up these steps and show him exactly what he'd thrown away. But now, with my daughters beside me, the plan felt suddenly dangerous. Elder Thorne emerged from the crowd, his weathered face creased with confusion and something that might have been a lot. His nostrils flared as he approached, testing the air around us, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit him, not recognition of me. He'd known me since I was a child, but recognition of something else entirely. "Sarah Blackwood," he said slowly, his voice carrying the authority of his position. "We thought you were dead?" I smiled, the expression sharp enough to cut glass. Disappointed? His gaze dropped to my daughters, and I watched his eyes widen. The sun, he could smell it on them, couldn't he? That distinctive blackthorn alpha scent that had once marked me as Damon's mate before he'd rejected me so publicly, so cruelly. "These are your daughters?" Thorne asked, though it wasn't really a question. "Luna, Stella, and Aurora," I replied, placing protective hands on their shoulders. "Say hello to Elder Thorne, girls." They chorused a polite greeting, but I could feel the tension radiating from every wolf within hearing distance. My daughters didn't just smell like powerful wolves, they smelled like blackthorn wolves, like alpha wolves, like Damon. The cathedral doors suddenly swung open, and there he was. Damon Blackthorne stood frozen in the doorway, his hand still on the brass handle, his dark eyes locked on mine with an expression of pure shock. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his dark hair swept back, looking every inch the alpha he'd been born to be. But it was the raw disbelief on his face that sent a thrill of satisfaction through my chest. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of white silk and blonde hair, Celeste, his brow, the woman he'd chosen over me, the woman who'd been carrying his child when he'd publicly rejected me in front of the entire pack. Sarah. My name left his lips like a prayer, like a curse, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. I lifted my chin, channeling every ounce of the confidence and power I'd built over the past 5 years. "Hello, Damon. Congratulations on your wedding day." His gaze dropped to my daughters, and I watched the color drain from his face. Luna chose that moment to step forward, her violet eyes fixed on him with curious intensity. "Mommy," she said in her clear, carrying voice, "he smells like us." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt every eye in the crowd shift between Damon and my daughters, felt the moment understanding dawned on face after face. Damon's hand tightened on the door handle until his knuckles went white, and somewhere behind him I heard Celeste's sharp intake of breath. This was it, the moment I'd orchestrated, The revenge I'd plotted through sleepless nights and endless days of building my fortune, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, all I felt was the overwhelming urge to grab my daughters and run. "Dad, Oja," Aurora whispered, the word cutting through the tension like a blade. Damon went perfectly still, his dark eyes wide with shock and something that might have been recognition, because Aurora was right. He did smell like them. He smelled like their father because that's exactly what he was. The crowd erupted into whispers and gasps, the sound washing over us like a tide. Elder Thorne stepped back, his expression grim, and I saw several pack members reaching for their phones. This would be all over the supernatural community within hours. Celeste appeared beside Damon in the doorway, her wedding dress a cloud of white silk and lace, her face pale but determined. She looked from me to my daughters with an expression I couldn't quite read, but when her gaze met mine, I saw steel. This woman had fought for Damon once before and won. She wasn't going to go down without a fight. "Damon?" she said quietly, her voice steady despite the chaos around us. "Who are they?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a man drowning. "Celeste, I can explain." "No need," I said smoothly, stepping forward with Luna's small hand still clasped in mine. "We're old friends. Aren't we, Damon?" The look he gave me was equal parts desperate and furious, and I felt a familiar thrill at having him so completely off balance. This was the man who'd humiliated me in front of everyone, who'd chosen another woman over me, who'd never even known he'd fathered 3 extraordinary daughters. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I tilted my head, enjoying the way he flinched. "I think everything that needed to be said was said 5 years ago." Stella tugged at my other hand, her violet eyes serious. "Mommy, are we staying for the party?" The innocence of the question sent another wave of whispers through the crowd. My 4-year-old daughter asking if we were staying for her father's wedding to another woman. The irony was almost too perfect. "I don't think so, sweetheart," I said softly, my gaze never leaving Damon's face. "I think we've made enough of an impression for one day." But even as I said it, I knew there was no walking away now, not when the entire pack had seen my daughters, had scented their bloodline, had witnessed Damon's reaction, not when Elder Thorne was already stepping forward with that look in his eyes that meant pack business, serious pack business. "Actually," Thorne said, his voice carrying clearly over the murmurs, "I think you'll find you're not going anywhere quite yet, Sarah Blackwood." The way he said my name, with emphasis and authority, made my blood run cold, because suddenly I realized this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about 3 little girls with violet eyes and alpha bloodlines that shouldn't exist, standing in front of a pack that had very specific rules about such things. This was about survival. I gathered my daughters closer, my designer heels suddenly feeling less like weapons and more like obstacles. Around us, the crowd pressed in, no longer shocked observers but potential threats. The sweet scent of fear from earlier had shifted to something sharper, more predatory. The game had changed, and I wasn't sure I knew the rules anymore. Chapter 2. I settled into the front pew like I owned the place, uninvited but undeniable. The cathedral fell silent except for the rustle of expensive fabric as 300 pack members turned to watch me arrange my daughters beside me. Luna clutched her stuffed wolf tighter, Stella smoothed her silver dress with careful precision, and Aurora simply stared at the altar with those unnervingly intelligent violet eyes. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, I was supposed to walk down this very aisle to marry Damon. Instead, I'd been banished in disgrace, carrying his children and branded a liar by the woman who now stood at the altar in white silk. "Mommy," Luna whispered, her small voice carrying in the sudden quiet, "who's the pretty lady in white?" I followed her gaze to where Celine, no, Celeste now, I had to remember her chosen name, stood beside the altar in a gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was beautiful. I'd give her that. Blonde hair swept into an elegant updo, blue eyes bright with what looked like joy, her figure perfect in the fitted bodice. She was everything I wasn't, everything I'd never been, even before. "That's the bride, sweetheart," I murmured, smoothing Luna's dark hair. "Why does she look mad?" Stella asked with the brutal honesty only children possessed. Because despite the serene smile painted on her face, Celine's eyes were cold as winter ice when they met mine. There was something else there too. Something that made my skin crawl. Recognition? No, that wasn't right. It was more like satisfaction. She's not mad, baby. She's just nervous, I lied smoothly, even as my maternal instincts screamed warnings. Aurora tugged at my dress. Why does the big man at the altar keep staring at us? I didn't need to look to know she meant Damon. I could feel his gaze like a physical weight, burning into me with an intensity that made my carefully constructed composure threaten to crack. But I looked anyway, because I was a masochist who'd built an empire just to torture myself with this moment. He stood frozen at the altar, his hands clenched at his sides, his dark eyes moving between me and my daughters like he was solving a puzzle. The confusion rolling off him hit me in waves through the mate bond I'd thought was severed. The connection I'd spent 5 years trying to bury suddenly roaring back to life with painful clarity. The bond. God, the bond was still there. I'd convinced myself it was gone, that his rejection had cut it cleanly. I'd built my new life on that foundation, believing I was free, but sitting here, feeling the familiar tug in my chest, the way my wolf stirred restlessly at his proximity, I realized I'd been lying to myself. Some wounds never fully healed. The wedding march began, a haunting melody that echoed off the cathedral's stone walls. I watched Damon straighten, watched him try to focus on his bride as she began her procession down the aisle, but his eyes kept drifting back to us, to my daughters, and I could practically see the wheels turning in his head. They had his scent. They had his eyes, not the color but the shape, the intensity. They had his stubborn chin, and his way of tilting their heads when concentrated. How had I ever thought he wouldn't notice? The memory hit me like a physical blow, so vivid I had to grip the pew to stay upright. That night 5 years ago, the night that changed everything. I'd gone to tell him about the pregnancy, had planned to surprise him with the news that we were having a baby. Instead, I'd found him in his office with Celine pressed against his desk, her lipstick smeared and her dress wrinkled. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what came after, when I'd confronted them both, when Celine had spun her web of lies so skillfully that even I'd started to doubt myself. She seduced me, Damon, Celine had sobbed, pointing at me with a trembling finger. She came here tonight trying to break us up, tried to get me to leave town. When I refused, she forced herself on me, used her wolf to make me submit. The lie had been so outrageous, so perfectly crafted, that for a moment even I'd wondered if I was losing my mind. But Damon had believed it, had looked at me with disgust and disappointment, had listened as Celine spun more lies about my alleged jealousy, my supposed instability. "I'm pregnant," I'd whispered, the words falling into the stunned silence like stones into still water. "Is it even mine?" Damon had asked, and those 4 words had shattered my world. I'd been banished before dawn, cast out of the only pack I'd ever known, branded as unstable and dangerous. I'd discovered the pregnancy test in my purse during the long drive away from Silver Pine, the little pink plus sign that confirmed what my body had been trying to tell me for weeks. I'd almost died giving birth, 3 babies all at once, in a human hospital where the doctors didn't understand why I was burning with fever, why I kept asking for Damon, why I screamed his name during the worst contraction. The human staff had assumed it was the father's name, had tried to call him, but I'd given them a fake number through gritted teeth. He didn't deserve to know. He'd chosen to believe lies over the mate bond, had chosen another woman over me. He'd lost his right to know about his children the moment he'd asked if they were even his. "Mommy," Luna's voice pulled me back to the present. "You're squeezing too tight." I loosened my grip on her small hand, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Sorry, sweetheart." The bride reached the altar and I watched Damon take her hands with hands that trembled slightly. He was struggling, I realized with dark satisfaction. The perfect alpha was finally showing cracks in his composure. Reverend Mills began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the cathedral as he spoke about love and commitment, and choosing each other above all others. The words felt like mockery, like salt in wounds that had never properly healed. I should have felt vindicated. This was exactly what I'd planned, to show up and destroy his perfect day, to make him question everything he thought he knew. But watching him struggle to focus on his vows while stealing glances at us, I felt something unexpected. Pity. He looked lost, confused, like a man suddenly questioning the foundation his entire life was built on. The mate bond thrummed between us, carrying echoes of his emotions, whether I wanted them or not, and what I felt from him wasn't anger or resentment, it was recognition and growing horror. "Do you, Damon Blackthorne," Reverend Mills intoned, "take Celeste Morrison to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Damon's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes found mine across the cathedral, and for a moment, 5 years fell away. I was 18 again, standing in his arms for the first time, feeling the mate bond snap into place like coming home. I started, then stopped. Celine's grip on his hands tightened, and she leaned closer to whisper something in his ear. Whatever she said made him flinch, made his jaw tighten with what looked like resolve. "I do," he said finally, but his voice cracked on the words. I caught Celine's eyes over his shoulder and froze. She was looking directly at me, and her expression wasn't that of a nervous bride worried about her wedding. It was triumphant, knowing, like she'd been expecting this exact moment, like she'd been expecting me. The smile she gave me was pure poison, sweet on the surface but deadly underneath. She knew, somehow impossibly. She knew about the children, about what I'd discovered that night 5 years ago, about why I'd really been banished. My blood turned to ice as the pieces clicked into place. The way she'd been so ready with her lies that night, the way she'd known exactly what to say to turn Damon against me, the way she'd managed to get pregnant so conveniently soon after my banishment. She'd planned it all. "And do you, Celeste Morrison, take Damon Blackthorne to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," she said clearly, never taking her eyes off me, "for better or worse, in sickness and health, till death do us part." The words felt like a threat. Luna tugged on my dress again, harder this time. "Mommy," she said in her carrying child's voice, "why does that man smell like us?" The question hit the cathedral like a bomb. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward us. The Reverend's voice faltered mid-sentence, as he looked between my daughter and the groom. With dawning comprehension, Damon went white as death, his hands dropping from Celine so abruptly she stumbled. "What did she say?" he whispered, but his voice carried in the sudden silence. I felt the exact moment understanding hit him. The mate bond flared so brightly and nearly brought me to my knees, carrying a wave of shock and disbelief, and growing certainty that made my chest tight. "Luna, sweetheart," I said quietly, trying to salvage what was left of my control. "We don't." "But he does, Mommy," she insisted, pointing directly at Damon with the terrible honesty of childhood. "He smells exactly like us, like family." Stella nodded solemnly. "He smells like Dad." Aurora, my quiet observer, simply stared at Damon and said in her clear, serious voice, "Are you our daddy?" The silence that followed was deafening. Damon's legs seemed to give out, and he sank into the chair behind him like a man who'd been shot. His eyes were wild, darting between my daughter's faces, cataloging features I'd hoped he wouldn't notice. The shape of their eyes, the stubborn set of their jaws, the way they all tilted their heads when concentrating. "Sarah," he breathed, and my name on his lips sounded like a prayer, and a curse and a question all at once. Celine stepped forward, her perfect composure finally cracking. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice sharp. "They're obviously lying. Look at them. They don't even look like him." But even as she said it, I watched the crowd comparing features, watched realization dawn on face after face. The girls might have my coloring, but they had Damon's bone structure, his intensity, his unmistakable alpha presence. Elder Thorne stood from his seat in the second row, his weathered face grim. "I think," he said in his authoritative voice, "we need to pause this ceremony." "No." Celine's mask slipped completely, revealing something ugly underneath. "This is my wedding day. I won't let her ruin it with her lies." "They're not lies," I said quietly, standing with my daughters, arranged protectively around me. "And you know it." The mate bond was singing now, pulling me toward Damon with a force I'd forgotten existed. He was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time, like 5 years of carefully constructed reality were crumbling around him. "How old are they?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "4," I replied simply. I watched him do the math, watched understanding bloom across his features like sunrise. 4 years old, born 9 months after my banishment, born 9 months after that terrible night, when everything fell apart. "You were pregnant," he whispered. "That night, you were already pregnant." I lifted my chin, channeling every ounce of strength I'd built over the past 5 years. "Yes, and you never told me. You asked if they were even yours," I reminded him, the old pain sharp as glass. "You made your choice that night, Damon. You chose to believe her over me. You chose to cast me out, rather than trust the mate bond. Why would I tell you anything after that?" He flinched like I'd struck him. Around us, the cathedral buzzed with whispers and speculations, but I only had eyes for the man who'd broken my heart so thoroughly I'd thought it would never heal. He started to stand, then sank back down. "I need to process this. You need to finish your wedding," Celine said sharply, grabbing his arm. "Don't let her manipulate you again. She's lying. Can't you see that? She's always been jealous of us. Always. Enough." The word came out as a growl, alpha power behind it, that made several pack members step back. Damon was staring at Celine now, with something that might have been recognition. Just enough. Luna chose that moment to break free from my protective hold, her small legs carrying her down the aisle toward the altar before I could stop her. The entire cathedral held its breath as she approached Damon, her stuffed wolf clutched in one small hand. "Don't be sad," she said seriously, reaching out to pat his knee with the other hand. "Mommy says everything happens for a reason." The contact between them sent a visible shockwave through Damon. His eyes widened as her scent, unmistakably his daughter's scent, hit him full force. When he looked up at me, over Luna's head, I saw everything I needed to know. He knew, finally, completely. He knew the truth. And judging by the way Celine was backing away from the altar, her face pale with something that looked like fear, she knew that he knew. The game was about to change again. But this time I wasn't sure any of us were prepared for what came next. Chapter 3. Elder Thorne moved through the cathedral with the measured pace of a man who'd witnessed centuries of pack history. His ancient eyes, pale gray like winter sky, were fixed on my daughters, with an intensity that made every maternal instinct I possessed scream warning. I gathered Luna closer as she returned from comforting Damon, positioning myself between Thorne and my girls, like a shield made of designer silk and desperation. "Sarah Blackwood," he said quietly, his voice carrying despite its softness. The entire cathedral seemed to lean in, straining to hear. "We need to talk." "I don't think so," I replied, keeping my voice steady even as my heart hammered against my ribs. "We were just leaving." But Luna tugged at my dress, her violet eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. "Mommy, the old man smells like magic." "Old magic?" Thorne's weathered features shifted into what might have been a smile. "Perceptive child. All 3 of them aren't they?" His gaze moved to Stella and Aurora, who flanked me like tiny sentinels. "Tell me, little ones, do you dream of silver light?" The question hit like a physical blow. I'd spent 4 years watching my daughters wake from dreams they couldn't quite explain. Dreams of running through forests under silver moons, dreams of standing atop mountains, with wolves at their feet. I'd convinced myself they were just normal children's nightmares, the product of being raised by a single mother with her own trauma. "Sometimes," Stella admitted, her small hand finding mine, "we all have the same dream." "Stella," I warned, but Thorne was already nodding like this confirmed something he'd suspected. "The Trinity of the Silver Moon," he murmured, so quietly I almost missed it. The words sent ice through my veins. "What did you just say?" His pale eyes met mine, and I saw knowledge there, ancient, terrible knowledge that made my skin crawl. "You know what they are, don't you? Deep down, beneath all your denial and protective instincts. You know your daughters aren't ordinary wolf pups. Around us, the cathedral had fallen silent except for the rustle of fabric as 300 pack members strained to listen. Damon was still sitting in his chair at the altar, his face white with shock, while Celine stood beside him with her perfect composure cracking like fine china. "They're children," I said firmly. "They're my children, and they're perfectly normal. Normal children don't make alphas step back instinctively." Thorn replied, "Normal children don't carry the scent of multiple bloodlines in their veins. Normal children don't stop." The word came out as a growl, my wolf rising to the surface for the first time in years. "Whatever you think you know, whatever prophecy you're about to quote, I don't want to hear it." But even as I said it, I could feel something shifting in the air around my daughter, a subtle change in temperature, a shimmer that made the cathedral's stained glass windows seem to glow brighter. Luna's grip on her stuffed wolf tightened, and I caught the faint scent of ozone like the air before a lightning strike. "Mommy," Aurora whispered, her voice strangely distant. "Something's happening." I looked down and felt my world tilt sideways. My daughters were glowing. Soft silver light emanated from their skin like moonbeams, growing stronger with each passing second. Their violet eyes had shifted to something otherworldly, not quite the same color, but deeper, more luminous, like they contained entire galaxies. "No, no, no," I breathed, dropping to my knees and trying to gather all three of them into my arms. "Girls, you need to stop. Remember what Mommy taught you about keeping the light inside? For 4 years, I'd trained them to suppress whatever this was, had made games out of meditation and breathing exercises, had taught them to push down the strange abilities that manifested when they were emotional or excited. I'd thought I was protecting them, giving them a chance at normal lives. But the light was too strong now, fed by their excitement and confusion and the overwhelming presence of so many pack members. It pulsed around them like a heartbeat, silver and beautiful and terrifying. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. Someone screamed. I heard Damon curse, heard Celine's sharp intake of breath, heard Elder Thorn's satisfied murmur of, "At last." "The Trinity of the Silver Moon," he said louder now, his voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. 3 daughters, born of the prophesied Luna Queen, each carrying the power of past, present, and future. Luna sees what was, Stella knows what is, and Aurora glimpses what will be. "That's impossible," I whispered, but even as I said it, I remembered things I'd tried to forget. Luna's uncanny ability to know things about places we'd never been, as if she could see their history. Stella's way of reading people instantly, knowing their intentions and emotions before they spoke. Aurora's habit of warning me about things before they happened, like the time she'd refused to let me take a certain route to the grocery store, a route where a drunk driver had plowed through a red light minutes later. "You are the Luna Queen," Thorn continued, his ancient eyes boring into mine. "The one prophesied to unite all supernatural beings under a single rule. And these children, your children, are destined to inherit that power when they come of age." The silver light around my daughters pulsed brighter, and I felt something respond deep in my chest, a answering glow fainter but unmistakably present, like recognition. The mate bond with Damon suddenly made sense in a way it never had before. Not just attraction or chemistry, but destiny itself weaving our paths together. "I never wanted this," I said desperately, pulling my daughters closer even as they continued to glow like small stars. "I just wanted them to be safe, to be normal." "Normal was never an option," Thorn replied gently. "The prophecy has been foretold for centuries. The Luna Queen would be cast out by those who should have protected her, would bear the Trinity in exile, and would return when the supernatural world needed her most." Around us, the pack was in chaos. Some were backing away in fear. Others were dropping to their knees in what looked like reverence. I caught sight of several pulling out phones, no doubt to spread word of what they were witnessing. This was a disaster. This was everything I'd tried to prevent. "The supernatural world is fracturing," Thorn continued, his voice rising over the commotion. "The old alliances are breaking down. Vampires war with each other. The Fae courts are in chaos, and our own pack structures are failing. We need unity, Sarah. We need the Luna Queen to rise and fulfill her destiny. I don't care about destiny, I snapped, my protective instincts overriding everything else. I care about my daughters having lives that don't end with them being hunted, or used, or sacrificed for some greater good. But Luna was looking up at me with eyes that held far too much understanding for a 4-year-old. "Mommy," she said softly, "the old man is right. We dreamed about this place. We dreamed about coming home." "This isn't home," I said desperately. "Home is our apartment in the city, where no one knows what we are, where you can just be little girls who pretend not to see the spirits in the walls," Stella interrupted quietly. "Who pretend not to know when the neighbors are lying to each other, who pretend not to dream about wolves and magic and silver moons." Aurora nodded solemnly. "We've been pretending our whole lives, Mommy. We're tired of pretending." The silver light pulsed around them again, stronger now, and I felt something crack inside my chest. They were right. I'd been so focused on protecting them from their destiny that I'd never asked if they wanted that protection. I'd assumed that normal was better, that safety was worth any sacrifice. But looking at them now, really looking at them, I saw children who'd been hiding their true selves for years, children who'd been suppressing fundamental parts of who they were because their mother was too afraid to let them shine. "The prophecy speaks of trials," Thorn said, his voice gentler now. "Challenges the Luna Queen must face before she can claim her throne. The first was exile, cast out by her own pack. The second was survival, raising the Trinity alone, while building her strength. The third," he paused, his ancient eyes moving between me and Damon, who was slowly approaching us with wonder and terror warring across his features. "The third is forgiveness," Thorn finished. "The Luna Queen must forgive those who wronged her, and unite with her true mate to create the foundation for a new age." I felt Damon's presence behind me, felt the mate bond pulling at my chest with renewed intensity. When I turned to look at him, I saw my own confusion and fear reflected in his dark eyes. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I should have trusted you, should have known. This isn't about us." I cut him off, though my heart clenched at the raw pain in his voice. "This is about them, about what's best for my daughters." But even as I said it, I could see the truth in their glowing faces. They weren't just my daughters, they were his too. They were the children of the prophesied Luna Queen, and her destined mate, and no amount of running or hiding was going to change that. A sound made me turn toward the altar, and my blood turned to ice. Celine was listening to everything, her perfect bride facade completely gone. Her face had transformed into something ugly and murderous, her blue eyes blazing with rage that made the air around her shimmer with heat. She was staring at my daughters, at the silver light surrounding them, with an expression of pure hatred. "No," she snarled, her voice carrying clearly through the cathedral. "This is not happening. I will not let some pathetic Omega and her bastard children destroy everything I've worked for." The insult hit the pack like a physical blow. Several alphas growled in response, and I felt Damon's power spike dangerously behind me. But it was my daughter's reaction that made my heart stop. The silver light around them flared brighter, shifting from gentle glow to blazing radiance that made everyone in the cathedral throw up hands to shield their eyes. When the light faded enough to see, my 4-year-old daughters were standing in perfect formation, Luna in the center, Stella and Aurora flanking her with power rolling off them in waves that made the ancient cathedral stones vibrate. "She's not pathetic," Luna said in a voice that carried far more authority than any 4-year-old should possess. "She's our mother. She's the Luna Queen. And you," her violet eyes fixed on Celine with laser intensity, "you're the one who lied." Stella stepped forward, her small hand glowing with silver fire. "We can see it now. We can see what you did. How you made Daddy send Mommy away." Aurora's voice was the softest of the three, but it cut through the cathedral like a blade. "You're going to pay for what you did to our family." The threat shouldn't have been terrifying coming from a 4-year-old girl, but the power backing it, the absolute certainty in her otherworldly voice, made several pack members step back in fear. Celine's face twisted with rage and something that might have been panic. You think I'm afraid of children? She spat. I've been planning this for years. I've sacrificed everything to get where I am. And I won't let anyone, not even the supposed Luna Queen, take it away from me. She reached into her bouquet, and my world slowed to nightmare clarity as her hand emerged, clutching something that gleamed silver in the cathedral light. A blade. She had a blade hidden in her wedding bouquet. Celine. Damon lunged forward, but he was too far away, still at the altar while we stood in the front pew. Time crystallized as she raised the weapon, her face twisted with murderous intent. My daughter's silver light flared brighter, but they were still just children, still vulnerable despite their otherworldly power. I threw myself forward, maternal instinct overriding everything else, ready to take whatever she meant to dish out to protect my girls. But the blade never reached me, because Elder Thorn stepped between us, his weathered hand closing around Celine's wrist with surprising strength, and his pale eyes blazed with power that made the cathedral stones sing. The prophecy will not be stopped by the jealousy of a pretender, he said in a voice that echoed with centuries of authority. The Trinity has returned. The Luna Queen has risen, and you, Celine Morrison, have just revealed yourself as the enemy we've been warned about. Celine's face went white as understanding dawned in her eyes. She'd just attacked the prophesied Luna Queen, and her daughters in front of 300 witnesses. There would be no coming back from this. And judging by the way my daughter's silver light was pulsing with barely contained power, she was about to discover exactly what happened to those who threatened the Trinity of the Silver Moon. Chapter 4. The cathedral erupted into chaos the moment Elder Thorn restrained Celine. 300 pack members were on their feet, some backing toward the exits in terror, others pushing forward to get a better look at my daughters. The cacophony of voices, gasps, prayers, accusations, hit me like a physical wall of sound, but it was nothing compared to what happened next. Luna stepped forward, her small body radiating silver light like a tiny star, and when she opened her mouth, the words that came out weren't in any language a 4-year-old should know. The ancient tongue, the old werewolf dialect that only the most learned elders still remembered, poured from her lips like water, each syllable resonating through the cathedral stones with otherworldly authority. Veritas reveliter, mendacia destruenter, Luna regina surgit. Truth be revealed, lies be destroyed. The Moon Queen rises. The words hit the assembled pack like a physical force, and I watched in horror as several wolves dropped to their knees involuntarily. Luna's violet eyes had gone completely silver, and when she looked at the crowd, her voice carried the weight of centuries. You will listen, she said, switching back to English but retaining that terrifying authority. You will see, you will know the truth. Luna, baby, stop, I pleaded, reaching for her. But she was beyond my reach now, not physically, but in some fundamental way that made my maternal heart shatter. Please, sweetheart, you're scaring people. But Stella was already responding to her sister's call, her small hands erupting in silver fire that cast dancing shadows on the cathedral walls. The flames didn't burn. I could feel their coolness even from several feet away. But they revealed, God, how they revealed. The fire spread outward like living things, silver tendrils reaching toward every person in the cathedral. And where they touched, truth blazed forth like sunlight cutting through darkness. I saw Celine's lies unraveling in real time. The fire showed everyone that night 5 years ago, not as she'd told it, but as it had really happened. The pack watched in stunned silence as the flames revealed her seducing Damon, her calculated manipulation, her cruel lies about me, forcing myself on her. They saw her coaching him on what to say, saw her planting seeds of doubt about my stability, saw her celebrating my banishment with champagne and laughter once I was gone. No, Celine shrieked, struggling against Elder Thorn's iron grip. Stop this. Make them stop. But the flames were merciless, spreading further, showing more. They revealed her affair with a human businessman to secure funding for her charity foundation. They showed her bribing pack officials to ensure favorable territory assignment. They exposed lie after lie, deception after deception, until the perfect image she'd crafted over 5 years crumbled to ash. Through it all, Damon stood frozen at the altar, his face cycling through shock, understanding and growing horror as he realized how completely he'd been manipulated. When the flames showed him asking if my children were even his, showed the devastation on my face, as I'd been cast out carrying his triplets. He actually staggered backward. "Sarah," he whispered, the name barely audible over the chaos. But I heard it anyway. My God, what have I done? But I couldn't focus on his realization, couldn't process the vindication I'd dreamed about for 5 years, because Aurora, my quietest daughter, my gentle observer, had begun to glow with power that made the cathedral itself tremble. "No," I breathed, recognizing the sign. "Aurora, honey, you need to stay with us. Stay in now. Don't go looking at them." But it was too late. Aurora's gift had always been the most dangerous, the hardest to control. She didn't just see glimpses of the future like I'd told myself. She could shift reality itself, pull past and future into the present until the boundaries blurred beyond recognition. The air around her shimmered, and suddenly the cathedral wasn't just the cathedral anymore. The walls flickered and changed, showing glimpses of what this place had been, and what it might become. I saw it as it was being built centuries ago, saw the wolf packs that had gathered here for momentous decisions, saw weddings and ceremonies and celebrations stretching back through time. But I also saw potential futures, some beautiful, some terrible, all blazing with possibility. In one vision, my daughters stood as adults on a dais where the altar now rested, wearing crowns of silver light while supernatural beings from every species knelt before them. In another, the cathedral lay in ruins, while war raged between werewolves and creatures I didn't recognize. In a third, Damon and I stood together, older and scarred but united, watching our daughters lead a new world into an age of peace. Visions crashed over the assembled pack like waves, and chaos truly erupted then. Some people were screaming, others weeping, all of them trying to process images of futures they were never meant to see. Aurora, I lunged forward, finally reaching my daughters through the swirling maelstrom of power and possibility. "Baby girl, come back to mommy. Come back to next." Her silver violet eyes found mine, and for a moment she was just my 4-year-old daughter again, scared and confused by the magnitude of what was happening around her. "Mommy," she whimpered, the otherworldly authority fading from her voice. "I can't make it stop. There's too many possibilities, too many paths." The cathedral shuddered as reality tried to reassert itself, past and future and present warring for dominance. I could see the strain on Aurora's small face, could feel her power building towards something that might tear apart the very fabric of space and time. "Girls," I said desperately, gathering all 3 of my daughters into my arms, even as silver fire and otherworldly visions swirled around us. "I need you to breathe with me. Remember our counting game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Luna joined in, her ancient authority flickering back to childish uncertainty. 7, 8, 9, Stella whispered, her silver flames guttering lower. 10, Aurora finished, and the vision stopped. The cathedral snapped back to singular reality so abruptly that half the pack stumbled. The sudden silence was deafening after the chaos of moments before. My daughters slumped against me, exhausted by their display of power. But the damage was done. Everyone had seen. Everyone knew. There was no hiding what they were anymore. No pretending they were ordinary children who could have ordinary lives. "My daughters," Damon said quietly, approaching us with wonder and terror and something that might have been reverence in his voice. "They're really my daughters." I looked up at him, seeing him truly for the first time in 5 years. The silver fire had revealed his truth too. His genuine shock at learning about the children, his growing horror at what he'd done to us, his desperate desire to somehow make amends for the unforgivable. "Yes," I said simply. "They're yours." He dropped to his knees beside us, his hands hovering uncertainly over the girls as if he was afraid touching them might break some spell. May I?" Luna looked up at him with those 2 knowing eyes and nodded solemnly. "You can hug us if you want. We've been waiting." The sob that escaped him was raw and broken. He gathered all 3 girls into his arms, and I watched 5 years of separation crumble as they accepted their father's embrace with the easy forgiveness of children who'd been dreaming of this moment their entire life. "I'm sorry," he whispered into their hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry I didn't know. I'm sorry I failed you all so completely." "It's okay, Daddy," Stella said seriously. "The silver fire showed us your heart. You were tricked, but you're not bad. We knew you'd find us eventually," Aurora added. "I saw it in the dreams. For a moment, watching my daughters with their father, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 5 years, hope. Maybe this disaster could become something beautiful. Maybe we could find a way to be a family despite everything that had happened." Then the cathedral doors exploded inward. Armed wolves poured through the entrance. Not pack members, but warriors in tactical gear with weapons that gleamed silver in the light. At their head strode a man I recognized from old pack photographs, though I'd never met him personally. Marcus Morrison, Celine's father, and from the look on his weathered face, he hadn't come to congratulate his daughter on her wedding. "Where are they?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the cathedral walls as his warriors spread out to surround the assembly. "Where are the abominations?" Elder Thorne released Celine so abruptly she stumbled, his ancient face going grim as he took in the military precision of the new arrival. "Marcus," he said carefully, "this is neither the time nor the place for—" "This is exactly the time and place." Marcus cut him off, his pale eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on my daughters, who were still glowing faintly with residual power. Those things just violated every law of nature and pack hierarchy. They used forbidden magic in a sacred space. They must be stopped before they can grow into the threats the prophecy warns about. Threats? I stood slowly, positioning myself between Marcus and my girls. "Their children, their weapons," he corrected harshly. "Weapons that will bring about the end of pack structure, the end of proper werewolf society. The prophecy speaks of unity, but it's the unity of conquest. Those abominations will subjugate every supernatural being under their rule, destroy the natural order that has kept us strong for millennia." Behind him, Celine struggled to her feet, her wedding dress torn and her perfect hair disheveled. "Daddy," she said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank God you're here." They were going to. "Silence," Marcus snapped, and his daughter's mouth clicked shut. "You failed, Celine. Your one job was to prevent this bloodline from manifesting, and you failed spectacularly." The words hit me like ice water. "Prevent this bloodline from manifesting," I repeated slowly. You both knew what my daughters would become." Marcus smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Of course we knew. Why do you think we worked so hard to separate you from Damon? Why do you think we made sure you were banished before you could give birth on Packlands? We've been fighting this prophecy for decades, doing everything in our power to prevent the Trinity from being born. But they were born anyway," Elder Thorne said quietly, stepping protectively closer to us. "The prophecy cannot be stopped, Marcus. You should know this." "The prophecy can be ended," Marcus replied, raising his hand in a signal that made his warriors level their weapons. "If the Trinity dies before they reach maturity, before they can claim their full power, the prophecy dies with them. The natural order is preserved." Luna stepped forward, and despite her small size, despite being only 4 years old, she faced down a man with decades of military experience and a pack of armed warriors without flinching. "You cannot stop what was always meant to be," she said in that ancient, authoritative voice that made the cathedral stones ring. "We are the Trinity of the Silver Moon. We are the daughters of the Luna Queen, and we will not be silenced by those who profit from division." The silver light around her flared brighter, and Stella and Aurora moved to flank her, their own power responding to the threat. The temperature in the cathedral dropped 10 degrees as ancient magic awakened in response to danger. Marcus's face twisted with disgust. "Look at them," he spat. 4 years old and already drunk on power, already believing they're above natural law. This is exactly why they must be stopped." He lowered his hand, and I felt my world narrow to the single moment. My daughters glowing with power they barely understood, facing down warriors who would kill them without hesitation, all because of a prophecy I'd never asked for and a destiny I'd spent 5 years trying to escape. The weapons rose, silver bullets gleaming in chambers designed to kill werewolves. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt my own power, not the strange otherworldly authority of my daughters, but the deep primal strength of a mother wolf, whose cubs were threatened, rise up from depths I'd forgotten existed. The Luna Queen, Elder Thorn had called me. It was time to find out what that meant. Dacta Chapter 5. The first silver bullet whistled past Aurora's head, missing her by inches. Something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped like a steel cable under too much tension, releasing 5 years of suppressed power, buried instincts and the primal fury of a mother, whose cubs were under attack. The transformation that overtook me wasn't just my wolf surfacing. It was something deeper, older, more elemental than anything I'd ever experienced. Power exploded outward from my core like a nuclear blast of pure alpha energy. The cathedral shook, ancient stones singing as raw authority filled every corner of the sacred space. Several pack members dropped to their knees involuntarily, while Marcus's warriors stumbled backward, their weapons wavering as instinct warred with training. But I was beyond caring about their fear. My body shifted and changed, but not into my usual wolf form. This was something between human and wolf, something that had never happened before. A hybrid form wreathed in silver light that made me nearly 7 feet tall, with claws that could rend steel and canines that gleamed like moonlight. My designer dress hung in tatters around a frame that pulsed with barely contained violence. "Touch my daughters," I snarled, and my voice carried the weight of earthquakes. "And I will show you what happens to those who threaten the Trinity." Marcus raised his weapon toward Luna again, and I moved. 5 years of yoga and self-defense classes had nothing on the fluid grace of this new form. I crossed the cathedral in 3 bounds, my claws raking across Marcus's chest before he could pull the trigger. He crashed into the stone wall hard enough to crack the ancient masonry, blood streaming from 4 parallel gashes that would scar for life if he lived. His warriors opened fire, silver bullets filling the air where my daughters stood, but they met a wall of pure alpha power instead. Damon had transformed too, his massive black wolf form placing itself between the gunmen and our children, roaring challenge that made the cathedral windows rattle. For the first time in 5 years, we moved as one. I'd forgotten how perfectly we complemented each other in battle. Where I was speed and precision, he was strength and devastation. Where he drew attention with his size and fury, I slipped through defenses like silver lightning. Our mate bond, dormant for so long, roared back to life with an intensity that stole my breath even as I fought for our daughters' lives. I could feel his emotions as clearly as my own, his fierce protectiveness, his rage at himself for failing us, his desperate determination to make up for 5 lost years. When he launched himself at 3 warriors simultaneously, I was already moving to cover his flank. When I ducked under a silver blade, he was there to crush the wielder's wrist before the weapon could find its mark. We were devastating together, unstoppable. But even as we fought with preternatural synchronization, even as the mate bond sang between us like a perfectly tuned instrument, I kept my heart locked away. This changed nothing. He'd chosen his crown over me once, had believed lies over our bond. The fact that we fought well together didn't erase 5 years of abandonment. A scream made me spin toward my daughters, expecting to see them cowering in fear. Instead, I found them standing in perfect formation. Luna in the center, Stella and Aurora flanking her with silver light blazing around them like protective armor. But they weren't using their power to protect themselves. They were protecting others. Stella's silver fire had formed a barrier around a group of elderly pack members, shielding them from the chaos while her flames revealed the cleanest exit. Aurora's reality-shifting abilities were showing trapped pack members safe paths through the battle, her visions guiding them away from danger before it could find them. And Luna, my smallest daughter, was speaking in that ancient tongue again, but this time her words carried healing rather than judgment. Pack members who'd been wounded by stray bullets found their injuries closing. Elders who'd been knocked down during the initial chaos discovered strength returning to their limbs. Children who'd been separated from their parents were drawn together by invisible threads of silver light. My daughters weren't just protecting themselves. They were protecting everyone, friend and enemy alike. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This was who they were. Who they'd always been meant to be. Not weapons of conquest as Marcus claimed, but guardians, healers, leaders who would unite rather than divide. "Look at them," I shouted over the sound of battle, my hybrid voice carrying to every corner of the cathedral. "Look at what they're doing. Do they look like abominations to you? Do they look like threats?" Several of Marcus's warriors hesitated, their weapons lowering as they took in the sight of 4-year-old children using otherworldly power to save lives rather than take them. But Marcus himself was beyond reason, beyond seeing anything but the destruction of his carefully laid plan. "Pretty tricks," he snarled, struggling to his feet despite the deep gashes across his chest. "But power corrupts no matter how pure the intentions. They'll grow into tyrants. Mark my words, better to end the threat now while they're still innocent." He reached for a weapon one of his fallen warriors had dropped. A silver blade inscribed with symbols that made my skin crawl. Dark magic, ancient and malevolent, designed specifically to kill creatures like my daughters. "Sarah." Damon's warning came through our bond rather than his voice, his wolf form occupied with 3 warriors who were trying to flank the children. I turned, already moving, but I was too far away. Marcus was faster than his injuries should have allowed, the dark blade cutting through the air toward Luna's unprotected back. Time slowed to crystal clarity, and I knew with absolute certainty that I wouldn't reach her in time. Then a figure stepped between Marcus and my daughter, arms spread wide to catch the blade meant for Luna. Marcus. No, that was wrong. This was a different Marcus, younger, dressed in civilian clothes rather than tactical gear, his face twisted with anguish as he realized what was happening. "Father, no," he screamed, and the voice was familiar in a way that made my blood turn to ice. "Marcus, my Marcus, the man who'd helped me build my empire over the past 5 years, who'd been my business partner and closest friend, who'd helped me raise my daughters when I'd had no one else to turn to, the man I'd trusted with their lives 1,000 times over, the man who now stood between his own father and my children." Silver spreading across his chest as the dark blade found its mark. "Marcus." Luna's scream of anguish cut through the chaos, and her power flared so brightly it temporarily blinded everyone in the cathedral. When my vision cleared, my Marcus was on his knees, blood streaming from a wound that should have been instantly fatal, but he was still alive, still conscious, still staring at his father with betrayal and fury blazing in his eyes. 5 years, he gasped, his voice carrying despite his injuries. 5 years I've been working against you, protecting them, and you never suspected, never realized that your own son couldn't stomach what you were planning. Elder Marcus, I had to think of him differently now, stared down at his wounded son with something that might have been grief warring with fanatic determination. "You don't understand," the older man said desperately. "The prophecy will destroy us all. The natural order. The natural order is broken," Marcus shouted, struggling to his feet despite the dark magic eating at his strength. "Packs warring with each other, alphas abusing their power, the strong crushing the weak under their boots. These children," he gestured toward my daughters, who were glowing brighter with each passing second, "they're not here to destroy anything. They're here to heal what we've broken." Blood flecked his lips as he spoke, and I could smell the dark magic spreading through his system like poison. He was dying, had taken a blade meant to kill supernatural beings, and there was nothing any of us could do to stop it. "Marcus," I whispered, dropping back to human form as the battle around us stuttered to a halt. Everyone, warriors, pack members, even Elder Marcus, was staring at the son who'd betrayed everything he'd been raised to believe. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said, his voice growing weaker. "I wanted to tell you the truth so many times, wanted to explain why I was really there, why I'd offered to help you build your business empire, but I was afraid you'd run again, take the girls somewhere I couldn't protect them." The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. "You've been watching us this whole time, protecting," he nodded, swaying on his feet. "Father's been planning this for decades. The moment the prophecy identified you as the Luna Queen, he started working to prevent it. Separating you from Damon was just the first step. He wanted the Trinity dead before they could come into their power." "But you helped me raise them," I said desperately, my heart breaking as I watched this man, who'd been like a brother to me, dying from dark magic. You helped me teach them to control their abilities. A bitter laugh escaped him. I helped you suppress their abilities, just enough to keep them hidden, keep them safe, but never enough to truly damage them. Every lesson in control, every meditation exercise, I was buying time, hoping I could find a way to stop father permanently before they reached maturity. Why? The question came from Damon, who'd shifted back to human form and was approaching cautiously. Why betray your own pack, your own father? Marcus's eyes found mine, and in them I saw 5 years of friendship, of quiet support, of a man who'd helped me through the darkest period of my life without asking for anything in return. Because I fell in love with them, he said simply, not romantically. I knew Sarah's heart belonged to her mate, even if she wouldn't admit it. But I fell in love with those 3 little girls who could have ruled the world, but chose to play with dolls instead. I fell in love with a woman who built an empire with her bare hands, just to give her daughters a better life. I fell in love with the family you all could have been, if people like my father weren't so afraid of change. The cathedral was silent except for the sound of his labored breathing. Around us, warriors and pack members alike stared at a man who'd sacrificed everything, his family, his pack, his life, to protect children who weren't even his own. The poison, I said suddenly, remembering Aurora's frequent illnesses over the past year, Stella's struggles with concentration, Luna's nightmares that had grown worse rather than better. You said you'd been protecting them, but they've been getting sicker. Marcus's face crumpled. Father's been more subtle than I realized. He's been using me, the vitamins I brought them, the special drinks when they were tired, the comfort food when they were upset, everything I gave them in love. He'd contaminated with something designed to weaken their connection to their power. Horror flooded through me as I realized the full scope of the betrayal. Not just Elder Marcus's fanatical determination to stop the prophecy, but the way he'd used his own son's love for us as a weapon. Every act of kindness, every moment of care, had been tainted with poison designed to slowly kill my daughters. How long? I demanded, dropping to my knees beside Marcus as dark veins spread across his skin. How long have they been poisoned? 6 months, he whispered, his strength failing rapidly. But I've been diluting it, changing the compounds when I could. They're strong, Sarah, stronger than he anticipated. The poison slowed them down but couldn't stop them. Nothing could stop what they were meant to become. Luna approached slowly, her small hand glowing with silver healing light. Let me help, she said in her ancient, authoritative voice. Let me heal what was done to you. But Marcus shook his head, even as the gesture cost him obvious pain. The blade was designed specifically to kill those with supernatural abilities. There's no healing this, little queen. But there is something you can do for me. Anything, she said seriously. Forgive. Marcus nodded toward his father, who stood frozen in horror at what he'd done to his own son. He's wrong about everything, but he genuinely believes he's saving the world. Don't let my death add to the darkness he's already created. Luna looked toward Elder Marcus with those 2 wise violet eyes, and I held my breath. This was the man who'd tried to kill her, who'd poisoned her for months, who would have destroyed everything she was meant to become. I forgive him, she said simply, but forgiveness doesn't mean he gets to keep hurting people. She raised her small hand, and silver light flowed toward Elder Marcus. Not healing light, but something else, something that made him stagger backward, his eyes wide with shock. What did you do? I took away your ability to hurt supernatural beings, Luna replied matter-of-factly. You can't use weapons against us anymore. You can't command warriors to fight us. You can't even speak lies about us. Only truth will come from your mouth now. The binding was elegant and terrible in its completeness. Elder Marcus tried to raise his fallen weapon, but his hand passed through it like it wasn't there. He opened his mouth to give orders to his warriors, but no words came out. The prophecy speaks of justice as well as unity, Luna continued, her child's voice carrying impossible authority. You chose to be our enemy, so you'll spend the rest of your life unable to be anyone's enemy. You'll help people instead of hurting them, whether you want to or not. It was a fate worse than death for a man who'd built his identity around opposing the supernatural. To be forced to help the very beings he'd spent decades trying to destroy, it was poetic justice of the most brutal kind. But Marcus was beyond caring about his father's fate. He was looking at me with eyes that were growing dim, and I knew we were running out of time. "Take care of them," he whispered. "All of them. Damon's a good man who made a terrible mistake. The girls need both their parents. And you?" He smiled, and for a moment he looked like the friend who'd helped me build my first business, who'd taught my daughters to ride bikes, who'd been the closest thing to family we'd had for 5 years. "You deserve to be happy, Sarah. Don't let fear keep you from the love you've always deserved." The light faded from his eyes as the dark magic finally claimed him, and I felt a piece of my heart break that would never fully heal. He'd been my anchor for 5 years, the steady presence that had made single motherhood bearable, and now he was gone, sacrificed to protect daughters who'd never even know the full extent of what he'd done for them. But even as grief threatened to overwhelm me, I felt something else stirring, the mate bond blazing between Damon and me with renewed intensity. His hand found mine across Marcus's still form, and for the first time in 5 years, I didn't pull away. We had a battle to finish, a prophecy to fulfill, and 3 daughters who needed both their parents to guide them through whatever came next. The Luna Queen had risen, just as the prophecy foretold, and she was done hiding. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe, like, and share this video to be the first to get notified when the part 2 of this story drops.